Hello, welcome to PM Express Personality Friday. My guest on the show is a member of the Order of the British Empire and has been a medical practitioner in the United Kingdom for 40 years plus. Now, we want to talk to Dr. Nellie Annan-Adjaye to walk us through her life as a leading pediatrician and a child health care expert in the United Kingdom, and a lot of the memories that she has working there and the impact she's brought to that society, leading to her honor as the member of the Order of the British Empire. Madam, it's great to have you on PM Express Personality Friday.
Thank you.
Tell me how you felt when you got a call from the Cabinet Office of the UK that you were in consideration for an MBE.
To be quite honest, I was stunned. I was stunned into silence for a few seconds. I thought, could I be hearing right? Here am I in Accra. This phone call is coming from Cabinet Office. Have they made a mistake? So when I gathered myself together, I said, yes, I am Dr. Adjaye, right? Are you of certain address that they said in the UK? I said, yes. That's me, all right. They wanted to identify that they got the right person. And I said, yes, what is it about? And I didn't want to say it loud in case it was about my taxes or something. It wasn't about that. But he said, oh, we are considering you as MBE. We've written to you, and we haven't heard from you. We can't go ahead until we've heard from you officially. So I said, well, you haven't heard from me because I'm actually in Accra. That's why. So anyway, to cut a long story short, have you got an email? Right? Yes. Okay, we will send the correspondence to you by mail, which is what they did. And you have to answer a few questions before they confirm it, to tell them that you are who you say you are. And that was it, yeah.
I mean, when you look back, I'm sure that although you were stunned, you're telling me you were stunned, you have contributed 40 years of your professional life to the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
And that is not something that should shock you because you started and you worked through it.
That's true. But, you know, you think a lot of people too have worked quite hard in that country. But this was most unexpected. And then I looked, but I thought maybe somebody has been watching me all this time that I'm working, and they think, okay, yes, my work deserves something like that. And what could it be that had actually spurred them on to put my name forward for this? And I thought back, and I thought maybe it was the Laming inquiry, which was a major inquiry that I was involved in.
I see.
And that perhaps stood me out among others.
Tell us about that inquiry. Let us understand how you feel that inquiry perhaps brought you to the limelight.
Well, I'm a child health specialist in that I'm also dealing with special needs children and child abuse children. That's my specialty. Okay. And having specialized in that over the last 20 years or so, it came to pass that the government had set up an inquiry to look into the death of an 8-year-old African child who came into UK and suffered child abuse until they died. The child died. The government was then looking for an expert to help Lord Laming to look into why this child died in the presence of all these specialties, all the services that we have in Britain: social care, police, housing, doctors, nurses. So they came to the Royal College of Pediatrics and Child Health, and they had some soundings, and I think my name came up as the person who was perhaps fit to serve on that inquiry. So I was asked to go to meet with Lord Laming in the Department of Health for a little chat. You know, in Britain, when they say a little chat, you got to be very careful. What do you mean by a little chat? Anyway, so I took myself there. They said, oh, well, you've been recommended by the Royal College of Pediatrics to come on this inquiry to help me out with that. So within my little chat with Lord Laming and other people from the Department of Health, this is a government thing, so ministerial thing. We had a lot of discussions. I discovered, having left there 3 hours later for that little chat, they said, oh, okay, we will get in touch with you. Oh, well, yes. A few minutes later, well, I think you've been hired to come on this inquiry. I said, oh, okay. What the heck do I do on this inquiry? And it turned out that we were, to me, a senior police officer, a senior social worker, and a senior nurse. We were the 4 professionals that Lord Laymin chose. We didn't know each other. We were to be an independent body to advise him on how it came about that this child died, in the knowledge of all the expertise we have in the UK. So there was a lot that we had to do, looking into the law in the country, the services that we provide, who provided that service, who provided what, when. So we had to look at all the notes. And it took us about 18 months. We were surrounded by lawyers, left, right, and center. I tell you, at the end of that, I didn't want to see a lawyer in my life again. Because even the people that photocopied things for us were lawyers. And everything we said had to be backed by evidence, and so on. And we made recommendations to the government that actually, yes, we do have these laws, etc., to look after children, but in practice, there were shortcomings, and people basically did not do their job well. And how can we recommend that people do their work better? So they put in some checks within the legal system and within the practice of pediatrics and child health, what to do when you see a child that you suspect is being abused. Because if you don't protect that child, the child goes back into the same old surroundings and can be beaten to death.
As was the case.
Which is what happened, yeah. So now everybody is very, very, very alert in the UK. We brought out a little booklet called What to Do if you suspect a child is being abused. And that was about 10 years ago when the Laymin report came out.
I see. I see. So, I mean, my point is that for me, I mean, as a Ghanaian, and I identify with you because you were born in Ghana, when somebody is honored with an MBE, member of the Order of the British Empire, they are normally described as ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Do you consider the work you've done in the UK in 40 years of your practice as extraordinary?
Most of the time, I thought it was ordinary. I'm an ordinary pediatrician doing an honest day's work. But I am very particular, like I think most doctors should be and are, in what I do, that I do it thoroughly. Because every little mistake becomes cumulative on the child. And at the end, either the child doesn't develop well or the child may go home and die. And it's a guilt on your mind, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So, yes, I've tried to do things thoroughly as possible. Maybe that's what I look for in other people too. Sometimes it's not forthcoming, and other times it is.
So how did you end up in Britain? I mean, this is $1 million question.
Oh, that's a long story. That's a long story. Well, I ended up there, I suppose, because my parents at the time were living, not in Britain, they were living in Rome.
In Rome.
And my old man, bless him, the late Dr. J.S. Annan, felt it was best if his daughters were educated in Europe, Britain in my case, because he could keep an eye on them closer in Rome than he could.
What were your parents doing in Rome?
My father was in the FAO.
Okay.
In the World Food Program.
So he was a diplomat?
He was a diplomat there. He'd been working in Ghana before he located to Rome. He was.
It means you had a good upbringing. You
Yes.
grew up in a bourgeois environment. You could be considered a rich girl.
Well, I don't know if you could say that. Well, we had a very good upbringing, whether rich or not. It's a question of we had a very disciplined upbringing. And yes, okay, I was privileged compared to other people that I went to school with. We were privileged that my parents had that post.
Yeah.
And we were able to, yes, advance from that. So when I went to Britain first in the boarding school, it was paid for privately by my parents. And again, when I went to the medical school, was paid for privately by
Private education in Britain is expensive.
It's not cheap, no. It's not cheap. But as I say, I'm privileged because working in the FAO, I'm sure that gave impetus and some help to my parents.
So by the time your parents made the decision to take you to Britain to study, you had by then finished basic school in Ghana, right?
Oh yes. My basic education was in Ghana. Yeah.
So tell us about your basic education from Ghana, and then we'll go around it, and then you tell me about your life in the UK in the beginning.
I started school. Actually, I have vague memories of a class 1 in Kumasi because at that time my father was living in Kumasi.
Yeah.
And then we moved to Accra. And I went to class 2 in Accra, Osu Girls' School.
I see.
Lovely school it was.
Osu Girls' School?
Osu Girls' School.
Does that school exist now?
Excuse me, that school still exists.
I see.
It was a lovely school. There were about, I suppose, 40 children in a class or something. And I think there still are 40 or 50 children in a class. But, yeah, that's where I started and went up to go to class 6. And then there was an exam to take. And my father thought, well, that was a Presbyterian school. Now, my father's very strict Methodist, okay?
I see.
He wanted me to go to this Methodist school. So I had to take the exam from class 6 to go to Mofratru Girls' School, which was a Methodist school.
Methodist school.
That's back to Kumasi.
Back to Kumasi, I see.
So I learned my Ashanti there.
Yeah.
Stayed there for 2 years. And then started the common entrance and went to the school. What I would call the school.
This school.
Wesley Girls High School.
Wesley Girls.
Yes.
So you're a gay chick.
I am a gay chick, all right. 5 years there, yes. Had a good time there,
I see.
too. Yes.
I mean, so it means that the discipline and your commitment to study and pursue your ambitions were all carved at Wesley Girls High School.
It was carved in Mofratro and Wesley Girls and at home as well. Yes. That was
and then so it was after Wesley Girls that you went to Britain.
Yes, by that time, actually, when I was in Wesley Girls, my father got transferred to Rome, but I finished Form 5 in Wesley Girls.
Okay.
So there was a time when I was going backwards and forwards to Rome towards the end of my years in Wesley Girls, and after that I went to the 6th form in a place called East Anglian School for Girls in Britain.
Which is now the Calford School, right?
Now it's called Calford School. East Anglian School for Girls was also a Methodist school.
I see.
I think that's probably why.
You had a Methodist discipline.
I had the old Methodist discipline, all right. Yes, indeed. That was an interesting school too. Very interesting. I don't know if you know anything about East Anglia, but that was in Suffolk. And Suffolk is, for those of you who perhaps are a little bit shy about the geography of the place, it's in what I call the stomach bit of Britain, the map of Britain. You know, the bit bulges out, we call the stomach.
Yeah.
And Suffolk is there. And the eastern winds come directly from there.
I see.
So it's a very cold place.
I see.
So coming straight from Wegehe to there, my goodness me.
Was tough for you. I mean, the other thing too that I would like to ask you is that, I mean, being a black girl from, black Africa, Ghana, and going to Britain and perhaps going to private school, which is usually, I don't know about then, but it's still the same now that private schools have become the exclusive preserve of rich people in the British society. So you must have had a big deal of a time settling into private school in the UK as a black girl.
Yeah, but people often ask me that, and then I look back and think, did I have a tough time settling there? As far as I can remember, in East Anglia School, I didn't encounter any racism as such. What I encountered was curiosity. I think people were curious that who is this person?
Well, you had the same intellectual capability like your white colleagues.
Yes, there was another black girl there, actually, much junior to me, because I went in at sixth form. That girl was about 2 or 3 years behind me. Her father was a judge in Nigeria. So she and I were the other two black people there. And I sort of took it in my stride. I suppose the upbringing in Wegehe just makes you fit in everywhere and anywhere. And I sort of took it in my stride, except for the cold, of course. That was a little bit, yes, unwelcome at times. Yes. The headmistress of the school at the time had a girl in the school who had some connections with Ghana.
I see.
So she paired me up with this girl. She was also in the sixth form.
You remember her name?
Yes, Mary.
I see.
Mary Thomas was her name.
I see.
Now, Mary is now a doctor who has also just retired. We've become friends ever since.
I see.
Going back 40, nearly 50 years, actually. Mary, we used to call her Tommy because her surname was Thomas. Her father was teaching in Wesley College at the time.
I see.
So she had been brought up in Ghana. She had grown up in Ghana as schooling this white girl until she got to about 12 or something, and then she transferred back to UK.
I see.
And so happened that she went to the same school as I went at sixth form. We met at the sixth form, and we've been friends ever since. And we both went into medicine, and she became an anesthetist. I became a pediatrician.
I see. My guest on the show, PM Express Personality Friday, is Dr. Nellie Annan-Adjaye. We're chatting about her background, her early beginnings, and when she went through high school to the UK, where she studied medicine and eventually practiced there. We'll take a short break, and when we return, we'll get into the nitty-gritties of her life as a medical doctor in the UK and what led to her honour as the member of the Order of the British Empire, MBE. Welcome back to PM Express Personality Friday with Dr. Nellie Annan-Adjaye. So, Doc, is it good to call you Doc or call you Nellie? Which one do you feel comfortable with?
Whichever.
Nellie. So let me call you Nellie so
Nellie,
that
yes.
we can get down to basics.
Yes.
Your life in the UK as a doctor. Let's talk about your challenges, the earlier challenges, how you overcame them, and what influenced your decision to go into a specialization like pediatrics.
I guess I've always wanted to do pediatrics, to take up pediatrics. So when I started training, after I qualified, I went to the Royal Free Medical School. And after qualifying, you have to do, those days they used to call it house jobs. I suppose now they call it interns or something.
I see.
Same
as we call in Ghana, housemanship.
Yes. You first have to do your house jobs, which is in general surgery, general medicine, and so on. You apply for that after your qualification, and you do that for a year. After a year, then you get registered on the GMC. It's the same here in this country. As a qualified doctor that you are able to practice. Now, in our day, it was left for a free market, so to speak. So you were entitled to apply anywhere within the system for your job, for the next job. So after the 1 year, I started applying for various jobs here and there. Sometimes you get called for interview, other times you don't get called for interview. And you could be unemployed, if you like, for several months without a job if the job you wanted was not available because it was given to other people. But I was lucky in a way that I think the only time I became unemployed was for a period for about 2 or 3 weeks. Most of the time I got the job, although I did not necessarily always get the job I wanted. That's a difference.
Yeah.
It's a free market, so a job might become available in Bristol and you're living in London. So you apply for the job in Bristol, you go there. They interview you, you take that job. Or a job might be available in Scotland. So we moved about. Every 6 months we had a suitcase.
Yeah.
You pick, because the jobs only lasted for 6 months. And you had the quest to look for the best job. Eventually I thought, well, look, I wasn't getting the job in the pediatrics that I wanted. Maybe it's best if I do my postgraduate exam first, and then people will start looking at me seriously. So throughout these jobs that I went on, we all called it job.
Yeah.
I took up appointments in infectious diseases, general medicine, accident and emergency, all those, every now and again, to bring in your, to give you some
Something
remuneration, something to live on as well. And throughout that time, during your job, you study for your postgraduate. So that was the period I was doing my postgraduate examinations. And I did that. I got the part 1 quite easily, and I went on to the part 2, and eventually got through the part 2. And after I got the part 2, and I went for one of the jobs, people sort of sat down and said, oh, okay. There's a black woman here, she says she wants to do pediatrics. Well, maybe let's see what sort of a metal is she made of. And I got the job in Great Ormond Street Hospital for Sick Children. It's the top hospital for children in UK.
I see.
It's now called Great Ormond Street Hospital. When I was there, it was called Hospital for Sick Children, Great Ormond Street. It's now been changed differently. But once you got that on your CV, people start taking you seriously, that you want to do pediatrics, and you start specialize. There I did pediatric neurology, pediatric infectious diseases, and so on. Went back to do neonatal pediatrics, that's a newborn pediatrics in Queen Charlotte's, all to get the experience whilst you're working for even higher speciality. And long and short, I took a break, actually. After all that, I took a break for about 12 to 15 months. I was helped by my husband at the time to take an MSc course. I did an MSc in
Community health?
Community health in developing countries.
I see.
It was being held in the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. Some people would have heard about that. But it was in combination with that and Great Ormond Street. I felt I need to come to Ghana at one point.
Yeah. And you needed to prepare yourself for that.
I needed to prepare myself. So I needed to do community health, community child health. I've always wanted to do that, to look after the children in the community and to study what are the illnesses that are actually affecting these kids, making them come to hospital so much. And there's plenty of that. So, but that was a discipline that was quite good, actually, for me, the community health in developing countries. When I got that MSc, it opened my mind to a whole host of things.
Yeah.
Because, you see, if you're working in hospital all the time, you have a different mindset to the person who is working within the community.
Yeah.
And here was I specialized because I had got my higher exams in pediatrics. And even one of the lecturers that interviewed me for that MSc course said, oh, but you got your specialist work or specialist degree, the MRCP. Why do you want to come and do an MSc? I said, hang on a minute, I just want to open my mind. And I think the course you're offering is a good one. And that's why I want to do that. I did a little bit of research in that and went ahead. And since then, I've just never looked back. I knew that was the sort of thing that I wanted to do.
But you didn't get to use that training ever to do anything in Ghana, your community health in developing countries?
No, not directly. Although indirectly, it helped me to understand what's going on in the community in Britain better. It's
and
very
it made you a better practitioner.
I think so. I think it was such a fantastic course. It opened my mind to all sorts of things, to think differently.
When I listen to you, it does appear that through other times you were studying and trying to get your postgraduate certificates and specializations. Did you ever have time for socialization at all?
Well, we do.
Did you ever socialize?
We do. I suppose we learn to burn the candle at both ends.
That's interesting.
We do, because especially when I was a medical student, sometimes there's a party going on and there's a party going on. You want to go to that party. But you got an assignment that you have to complete. Otherwise, in medical school, if you don't study, you're thrown out. There's no two ways about it. So you stay on and work, as they will say in Ghana, to do it. You finish your work, you've done your assignment.
You pack it up and then
now
you party
midnight,
the rest of the night.
Right, let's go and party. So you go and party, you come home at 4 o'clock in the morning, have a little sleep, and then continue again. But I think, you see, nowadays, I think that's probably why I've sort of earned too many wrinkles in my face too early, because we worked too hard. Because the study of medicine itself is long.
It's stressful. It's demanding.
And it's stressful. We go on that. When you come back and you're working 102 hours a week. I say, excuse me, what is this? The doctors these days don't work that long. Those hours, because it's been deemed that it's inhuman. Because now you go to work on a Monday morning. You don't come back home until Tuesday evening. You are working straight through. So that's your Tuesday evening off. And then you come back on Wednesday morning and you don't go until Thursday and so on. And if you have a weekend on, your weekend on started on Friday night, Friday during the day until Monday morning. You're on call 24/7.
24/7.
Sometimes you will sleep, yes. But you're on for emergency, and as soon as you heard that bleep, you jump up and off you go.
And off you go.
So you learn to sleep small, and work like that. And I think it's a bad habit, actually. I wouldn't recommend that for anybody else.
So at what point did you get married then? I mean, you were married already before you became a doctor?
No, I got married about 5 years or so after I qualified.
Medical school.
Yes, a medical school. My husband was doing a postgraduate degree in Manchester at the time when we met,
So how did you meet? Tell us how you met.
Oh, dear.
I mean, he was living in Britain, you were living in Britain.
Yes.
How did you meet? I mean, did you meet through family connection or you just bumped into each other?
But you say about socializing. So you went socializing and you meet people.
You meet the young bachelors.
You meet people when you're socializing, yes.
So your husband is a doctor too?
Yes, but he's not a medical doctor. He's an engineer.
Okay.
He's quite a prominent electrical engineer.
Okay.
He's been president of the Ghana Institution of Engineers since he came back.
Okay. So he has been back longer.
He's been back longer than me. Yeah.
Longer. So how did you balance, how did you sustain your marriage, seeing that you had to commit your life to medicine in the UK, he commits his life to engineering in Ghana?
Yeah. With difficulty, but we worked it through with, you know, understanding and all that. I come here frequently, he goes to UK frequently, backwards and forwards, yeah.
Did he enjoy life in Britain? I mean, the moments, the periods that he visited?
Yes, he did, so long as it was in summer. I can't quite understand. We lived there for about 24 years or something more, or more, actually. We all suffered this snow and all the rest of it.
Snow bites.
Frozen fingers and stuff like that. These days when he comes back, even in the summer, when the temperature drops to about 24 or 5, say, hey, it's cold. Oh, why are you living here in this country? It's so cold. I said, I don't believe you lived here all this time and now you're complaining. You know, the temperature is only about 22 here and you're complaining it's cold. Eh? But you can't get used to it, yes. It does.
And in the midst of all of that, you had to have children. Do you have children?
Yeah, we
how
have.
How many children do you have?
We as you see on the sheet, then I have one son, and we have other children between us.
Okay. So what kind of mother have you been? I mean, considering your work, your busy schedule. I mean, what kind of mother?
Perhaps not a very good model of a mother, actually, because my son, when he was 10, I said, look, what do you want to do? He said, not medicine, Mom. Pardon? He was bright enough to do that. He said, no. Why is that? Oh, you're never at home, was his answer, because you're always on call. You're never at home. So it was not a very good example if you're bringing up children to think you're never at home. Children need their parents. They need the parents, mothers, to be around. But actually, he ended up doing law, and he's working longer hours than doctors work. And so I said to him, excuse me, who said
you're never at home too?
So that's how it goes, really. That's how it goes.
And then, so is he in Ghana or he's also in Britain?
He's in Britain.
He's in Britain.
But he also comes to Ghana very frequently. You know.
So have you had an enjoyable life in the 40 years that you've practiced as a medical doctor in Britain, seeing that Britain has gone through several changes? I mean, changes in the multiculturalism of the nature of British society now, the changes in the healthcare system, the changes with the national health insurance, and all these challenges. Have you had an enjoyable life through it all?
Yes, I could say I have. But you see, I have a system, I suppose, built in my head somewhere to get on with life, no matter what the circumstance.
To see the brighter side always.
I tend to see the brighter side of things because there's so many things that could block your progress in life. And if you dwell on them, you never will move on. So there are certain things that I dismiss completely, and I see the brighter side and move on. The national health that I joined when I qualified is not the national health today at all. It was completely different. I don't know if you're probably too young to know that there was a series on the television in UK at the time called Doctor in the House, which was a pun on doctors working in the hospital and how they treat the nurses and all sorts of things. It was quite hilarious, actually, the Doctor in the House series. So many of that. That shows you my age, if you can still remember Doctor in the House series. Well, that's not like that anymore, because that was the NHS as it was then. Now, you will not recognize it. You come in. For instance, when I first started doing neonatal work, newborn work, a mother would have had their baby. They stay in the hospital for at least 5 days, if it's a normal baby. and the pediatrician goes and checks the baby on day 1 and on day 5 before the mother is discharged, and you help them with breastfeeding, you and the nurses, etc. Now, if you go to have your baby in the hospital and it's a normal delivery, you're out within 12 hours.
Yeah.
If you're not lucky, you're out within 6 hours in the same hospital. So what worries me slightly is, what chances have the young doctor today got to learn on the normal newborn child? Because that's when I learned. Because I'm checking the baby to see what a normal child looks like, and you hand them over to mom, and you say to mom, well done, etc. Have you established breastfeeding? Especially if it's a new mother. You want to help them, there'll be a nurse there who will help you and all. Now they come in and out very quickly. So there's a missing link there. But I expect people are looking into how best to train the young doctors today to learn, because until you know what the normal looks like, what's the abnormal going to be like? You don't know.
Two things have been happening in the British healthcare system. One with the brain drain from countries like Ghana, where our doctors, nurses and paramedics and healthcare workers all migrate from Ghana to the UK. And two is now the situation where qualified doctors are emigrating. They're leaving the UK to more lush places like New Zealand and Australia and the United States. Does that worry you? I mean, as somebody who has practiced medicine in the UK for a long time, does this trend worry you?
The first trend is what worries me, that there is the seemingly brain drain from the
poorer
countries to UK and all that. But it is not necessarily a drain if they're going there to learn new techniques.
And come home
and
to
come
apply
back
those techniques.
Yeah.
But many of them don't come back.
That is the big question. Should they or should not they not come back? I'm in a luxurious position in that, because I was privately trained, I don't have the guilt complex about having to go back. But if you've had the scholarship,
You
to
train with
here,
public money.
with public money, and you go and you don't come back here, it means Ghana is exporting the best of their resources outside. Have they thought about that? But they have to make it better for them to come back here, which is why I'm so pleased that Ghana has now got their own college. We now have the Ghana College of Surgeons and Physicians, which I'm sure you know about. It will be 10 years this year when the college will. Because the main idea of the college is to train the doctors that they go now to stay here, and maybe just give them a little bit of scholarship to go and better themselves and come back here. And I think that's a very good thing. And I'm one of the fellows of the college. I'm very proud
to be a fellow.
To be a fellow, because it gives me an entree in which I'll be able to use my skills to train other young doctors, use my skills to, for the better Ghana agenda, as everybody's saying.
Ghana agenda,
as everybody's
Dr.
saying, yes.
Nellie Annan-Adjaye is my guest on PM Express Personality Friday. We'll take a snap break and we'll be right back. Don't go. Welcome back. So, Doc, when you look at the health system in Ghana today, as a very experienced medical practitioner, what do you make of the status of our health system in Ghana?
Now you're asking a very, very big political question. The health system is, or has been, cash and carry, hasn't it?
for a long time,
For a long
before the
time.
NHIS.
And the
came
NHIS
along.
has come in. I'm pleased we have the NHIS in, but at the same time, I will caution the government about the extent of the NHIS.
When you say extent, you mean extent of coverage or extent of participation or what? I mean,
All of that. All of that.
how many people are
How many
enrolled
people are
onto
enrolled
the scheme?
in it?
How many people access health using their NHIS
Yeah.
cards?
Yes, that's right. I think, you see, the NHIS, as it was in the UK, it's not the NHIS that we have here
Yeah.
at all. Okay. And UK is now suffering from what was conceived as the NHIS in 1948. Because that's when the UK NHIS was born.
What is the challenges?
The
What are the
challenge is
challenges for the
expensive.
UK NHIS
It is
now?
expensive. And it is expensive because they have not defined, or the successive governments have not defined what the NHIS should cover. And now they're rolling back and saying, it should cover this and
This
that.
or
It doesn't.
that.
And people are not happy.
I see. So this is a lesson that we in Ghana should be learning from.
I think people
define what the NHIS will cover,
Yeah.
and then set the parameters from day one, so
I
everybody
think-
knows
I
that
think-
when
I
they
think
are
so.
they are on that insurance, they cover A, B, C, and they don't cover the rest.
Absolutely.
But is that not discriminatory? If you pay for an insurance and then you are able to access healthcare if your condition is a particular one, and you are not able to access healthcare if your condition is another one, is that not discriminatory?
Well, I don't think it is discriminatory, provided right from the beginning you know what your insurance is covering. Because if you went to private insurers, a lot of them will exclude so many things from your health. They will look at your health as it is now, and they will exclude a lot of chronic things.
We'll pay this, won't pay that, won't pay this, we'll pay that.
Absolutely.
And that's the reality of life, right?
That is the reality of it, because it is expensive, and it is expensive on the government coffers. Now, it is fine if the government can get a lot of money from the taxpayers. Now, in UK, as you know, we pay a lot of tax.
A lot. Yeah.
And a lot of tax go to this NHIS. So when you think the government is pumping billions into the NHIS, where is the money coming from?
Taxes.
It's coming from our taxes. And they have a system of collecting all the taxes. And you can't get away from your taxes. This is why when I got the phone call, I thought they were after me for my taxes.
Perhaps they will come in for your council tax or something
or
like
something
that.
like that. But I knew
So,
that I've paid my taxes.
So really, I mean...
But seriously, I think the government should be very, very careful, define it right from the word go, what the NHIS is going to cover.
So if you look at the NHS in the UK and the NHIS in Ghana, and you have spoken about how expensive it is, you must be wondering whether this whole concept or promise of a one-term premium is viable, or is something that can work in a lifetime. You just pay one premium, and for the rest of your life you pay nothing else.
I don't believe that is actually... I don't believe that is true. That you pay one premium for the rest of your life.
You don't think that can work?
I don't believe it.
This is a major NDC promise anyway. I mean, the government, on the back of late Professor Mills's campaign, he promised to turn the NHIS into a one-term premium where citizens get to pay their premiums just once in a lifetime. And of course, that promise has not been fulfilled yet anyway, and there've been some expert advice to say it's not possible.
I mean, I don't want to run into the politics of this.
Of it.
But you just have to look at the reality. Checks and counter checks and balances. Where is the money going to come from to pay for it if you only pay for it once? Does that mean you're going to be ill only once?
No.
It doesn't work. That's what I'll say to that.
So you would say that people should pay for their health care. If they want quality health care, they should pay.
People should pay for it. I agree there
but
are
then
poor
insurance
people,
systems make it easier to pay.
Yes, there are poor people who cannot pay for it. They should be persuaded to pay a nominal fee at least, to cover that. And that needs to be explained to the people, the poor people, and they should know what it should cover. For instance, I mean, I'm no economist or anything at all. I don't even understand the money.
You're a medical expert.
But, you know, medicine costs a lot. Yet you have people that will be ill, people that will have accidents and so on. Can the NHIS just cover your illness, your first illness, your accident and emergency, or your childbirth, or that sort of thing? I think it needs to be defined a lot more by the experts, the economic experts in this factor, because it's not easy. But obviously, being a pediatrician, I tend to sway to the pediatrics. There's a lot of preventive work being done in pediatrics, which is good. The immunization, etc. I think that should be free. And I think it is free.
It is free. Mostly free.
Because if you prevent children coming into hospital, you won't have to pay for them later on at the end. The exercise should go to the people that are teaching the parents why they should bring their children forward to be immunized. The immunization coverage is not 100% everywhere. And to have a good immunization coverage, you need at least 95% and upwards. I doubt if it is that everywhere in the country. This is where people should organize themselves to think about, make sure that it is covered and the vaccines are right at the time they're giving it and so on.
In Ghana, healthcare for special needs children is a very big challenge. Yeah. I mean, I'm not authoritative enough to say that but I think that it's close to non-existent healthcare for special needs children. As a special needs expert, maybe it's fair to call you that. What would be your recommendation to authorities that be? Of course, this is not a political matter, but how best can Ghana as a country, as a lower middle income country, help to enhance or improve healthcare for special needs children?
You see, I go back to prevention again. Prevention, prevention, prevention. We have to prevent the special needs happening for a start. And you prevent that from childbirth. Okay? If you look at these children that have special needs, a lot of them have happened.
Anyway, when we say children with special needs, we're referring to children who have
cerebral palsy,
autism,
and so on.
Okay.
And or severe neonatal infections that have caused them to have special needs. Some of them are preventable, and they're preventable through pregnancy and childbirth. And I think the midwives and people should take care of that. And then when it comes to childbirth, just make sure that the child is being born correctly, how the mother is not bleeding to death, and so on and so forth. Okay, the child has got immunization. There's some that you cannot help, like a child being born with autism. You can't help that. You don't know when the child is lying here today, born, nice, 3-kilogram baby, that's going to turn out to be autistic at the age of 5. You don't know that because that's not a preventable. You don't know that you're going to have a child born with Down syndrome. But when they've been born, there should be doctors and nurses with expertise to advise the parents, look at the child's development and advise them how best to help the child develop as they grow. Okay? Autism is a difficult one because there's not enough provision. Yet, we're seeing a lot more autistic children, both here in Ghana and in the UK. I'm in touch with a lady that runs an autistic school. Because of my special needs, I fish out for all these things. Yeah. And yes, she's seeing a lot more autistic children, but it costs a lot to look after them. If we make provision for such children, we need to make provision for the expertise that will look after them as well. And that's where the cost is. Train them well, to look after them well. Otherwise, they then become difficult children and difficult adults that don't fit into society. Yet I know that from my own experience, if we pick up an autistic child at the age of 2 early and deal with a lot of their behavior difficulties that they're showing, and they go to this special school and they have the good education and all that, provided their intelligence level is okay, they do okay. And they come out age 15, 16, maybe doing certain jobs, repetitive jobs, but they are committing to society, aren't they? Now, there's a group of children that is preventable, that I'm very that is not being prevented, that I'm very keen on. These are the children that are abused.
Abused children.
Abused children. They end up becoming special needs children. A lot of them end up becoming special needs children. Now,
when you say abused, you mean children who have been assaulted sexually and physically, or what? I mean, what kinds of abuses would constitute child abuse?
I'm talking about physical abuse, emotional abuse, and sexual abuse, and neglect. Neglect you can probably deal with through education, with because of ignorance and so on. Children are neglected, etc. You leave the kids to play in the gutter and such like. You can't expect the child to grow up to be a healthy adult like yourself. But I'm talking about the children that are physically and sexually abused. Now, if they don't end up being maimed from the abuse, some of them grow up with distorted minds. Now, that is a difficult one to cure. What contribution are they going to make to Ghana to further the better Ghana agenda? No way. No way. The physically abused children, and I've seen some even in Ghana as I speak, coming with head injury. What happens? They go to the theater for the blood to be extracted from their mind. But the doctor doesn't find out how the child was abused.
Or how that condition came about.
Exactly. And that child could end up dead next time.
So do you consider child labor, for example, as a form of abuse?
It depends on where you live. If you're in the United Nations and you're sitting there and you're saying every child under 18 shouldn't be working, etc., and so on, yes, then that becomes an abuse. But the reality is that some children have to work, and they have to work for their living because the parents are poor. They don't come from a privileged background like you and I. Question: at what age should you be asking this child to work? And are you abusing them? If they're contributing to the economy of the household within a loving, caring environment, I wouldn't call that abuse.
Abuse, right.
I'll call that poverty, okay? I won't call that abuse. But if you're beating this child because they didn't go and fetch the water for you to make the kenke to go and sell to get, then that is abuse. That is abuse.
Dr. Annan-Adjaye, let me ask you one final question, then we'll wrap up. Ghana is 56 years old after independence.
Yeah.
When you look at the country where you were born, 56 years on, are you content with the progress we have made as a country? If not, what do you think we could have done better in all facets of our country's economy?
I'm proud in many ways what we've achieved so far. Certainly, if you look at the big, tall buildings and going on, the commerce and so on that's going on, I'm proud of that. We moved on in 56 years. And by the way, I marched on the first Independence Day.
I see.
Yes.
I see.
So I'm no spring chicken. I remember that. The first Independence Day, when I was in Mofratro, then we went to march. Yeah. Yeah. So we've worked hard and we've done that. But what disappoints me is the filth that I see about. I don't know whether it's because the population has increased or not, but people's behavior actually disgusts me a lot. The place is scattered with
Rubbish.
rubbish. Rubbish in the gutter, rubbish in the streets, rubbish everywhere. It doesn't have to be that. And is that because people don't care about where they put rubbish? One of my siblings joke with me that, you know, you are a gutter person. Because yes, I look after at the gutter. If I come to an area and the gutter is filthy, I know this place is filthy. Because nobody cares about cleaning the gutter. And the only time you saw a gutter clean is, unfortunately, when people were being beaten in the Rawlings regime to clean the gutter. Why is it that people have been set job to do and they don't do it? And they don't do it well. That's what I mean by my own discipline.
Yeah.
If I do a job, I do it well. If you're supposed to clean the gutter, clean it well. If you're not supposed to put the plastic bag that you just drank the water from on the floor, put it in a dustbin. Put it in a rubbish place. If you're not supposed to put your rubbish behind somebody's wall, why do you do that? Why discard that? That disgusts me more than anything else. And people's attitude to doing that, because they don't seem to care. Are they content with filth around them? I'm not.
These must change. 56 years on,
That
we have
have
no
to change.
excuse to live in filth. Dr. Nellie Annan-Adjaye is a medical doctor, has recently been honoured. The member of the Order of the British Empire, MBE, was my guest on PM Express Personality Friday. Thanks for making time with us, and join us again on Monday for another interesting edition of PM Express. Good night.